right, folks, we're back. It's been a minute. I will tell you that I've had just an exhausting holiday season so far, between comedy and a variety of other things I'll talk about in a moment. I just want to make sure I'm going to do a quick check and make sure that my audio is coming from the right source. We are good. I think, by the way, I think a past episode the audio came from just my webcam mic, like sitting here talking into a relatively expensive mic setup, and then it's just all audio is coming directly into my webcam mic. Not today, not today. I've had exhausting travel. We've talked about it at different points. I had Wisconsin. I told that story on here, and then last weekend I was. This one wasn't too bad. Friday I drove to Everett, Washington. Not too bad. It was like 2 hours there, to be honest with you, and then like an hour and a half back. But then on Saturday, I left my house at 11 a.m. Winter storm warning, by the way, to go to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, to do a corporate gig. So not only was it a long travel day, because, and I don't want to spoil the end, but the plan was in flux the whole time. I had like a plane ticket bought, I had a hotel reserved, I had a rental car reserved, because who knows what the Snoqualmie Pass is going to be like. And then I get this like a winter storm warning, but I'm looking at the forecast and I'm going, I think I can be cheap and just not use it. And so I drove over the pass, drove to Coeur d'Alene. I stop in Coeur d'Alene at a rest stop to change into like a button-up shirt for this corporate gig, and just immediately starts dumping snow. But it's snow that's not sticking. It's warm. And I also, by the way, I saw like if you're aware of I-90 traffic between Ritzville, well, I don't even know the geography very well, but the like Ritzville area, there was this just super icy stretch of I-90. I saw 3 Amazon trucks pointed backwards compared to the way traffic was going, because they got completely jackknifed. It was terrible, and I was like, I'm just the whole time I'm like texting my wife. I'm like, I think I'm gonna probably just get a hotel out here. And then I start looking at the forecast, and it's going to be worse the next day. It's going to be terrible. And so I toughed it out. I drove all the way back through this Ritzville area, which, by the way, east of the mountains, they just dump salt all over the street, all over the highway. It was great. It was in great shape by the time I got to it. But yeah, I kept looking. I'm like, it might be worse tomorrow. And then I had a show on Sunday. I was doing a live taping. Gabe Rutledge, my buddy, recorded 2 crowdwork specials. And by the way, keep an eye out for those at Bart Comedy on YouTube, which I have a hand in some of the production over there. Go check those out, because those are going to be amazing. Gabe's the best comic in the Northwest. I've said that for years. Those are going to be fucking great. He murdered. He came up with jokes in real time that are like just impossible to imagine coming up with, just if I sat down and wrote for 3 weeks, and just, yeah, in real time, saying some of the funniest shit I've ever heard someone say on stage. By the way, did not have a great set on that. I suppose having coming off of a 14-hour travel day, and being tired and whatever, no one gives a shit. But yeah, I got to the very top of the pass that day on Saturday. I was just like fucking white knuckling it, and got to the top of the pass, and it started dumping snow. The only really scary part on the way back, I will say, like that stretch of Ritzville, which was flat, but it was pouring rain, and it was 29 degrees out, which I don't know how to explain that. I don't know like how that happens, as far as like why it wasn't snow, but it was pouring rain and 29 degrees out. So that's, I think, freezing rain, I believe is what they call that. And it got on the road, and it was so goddamn slippery. And I mean, 5 accidents in a 10-mile stretch that I went. It was fucking crazy. So I made it to Coeur d'Alene, and then decided, yeah, to drive back. And the only stretch was at the summit. It was like, thankfully, nobody very close to me behind me. And I just used the whole goddamn freeway. I drove down the center. You can't see the lanes anyway. And I just drove 35 miles an hour over the summit, and toughed it out. No chains. Never put chains on a car. I hate driving in the snow, but I made it back without having to do it, without having to break my chain virginity, and made it back. So that was exhausting. And then I woke up. I was sick Monday morning. No, sorry. What was Monday? Maybe I was just tired on Monday. But I woke up on Tuesday, and my dog. Yeah, that's what it was. Sunday night my dog was acting weird, and on Monday morning she was obviously sick. And then we kind of debated taking her to the ER, and she was acting kind of weird, and she had kind of a swollen snout, all that. And then we didn't take her, and then the next day we wake up and she had thrown up all over our bed. Yes, we're white people. We let our dog sleep in our bed, okay? Comment below, by the way, if you don't let your dog if you let your dog sleep in your bed or don't. I'm curious. That's one of those things that I say and I'm ready to be criticized. It's one of those I'm preparing to be criticized for letting our dog sleep in our bed. She throws up in our bed. She throws up on our bedroom floor. She throws up twice in the living room, and we're like, but she's not. I know this all sounds kind of bad, but she also is kind of a pukey dog, whatever. So she's lethargic, and eventually I call the vet and schedule an appointment, and hold on, hell yeah, Trevor Neal, dog sleeps on the bed, hell yeah. Trevor Neal's a buddy of mine. But here's one thing I will say. I have a pit bull mix, which maybe changes the math a little bit, or at least the Tetris of fitting her on the bed. So she throws up on the bed. We don't even know, by the way. She's a silent puker, which is nice. Didn't wake us up ever, but then we wake up and the sheets just have a bunch of puke on them. As disgusting as that may be, that is the case. Hold on, I gotta mute this other thing because I got stuff going on in the. And then she just is kind of lethargic, and her face is swelling. And finally, I realized she's having an allergic reaction. And then I thought she got bit, so I got her some Benadryl, cleared it up, took her into the. So my point is, of all this, dog's fine, by the way. Don't worry about her. She's doing great. Appetite's back, all that stuff. But stressful couple days. Didn't spend a lot of time watching or thinking about sports. But we're back for a moment to talk about the Mariners, the Seahawks, the Seahawks Packers. By the way, my buddy Trevor Neal is a Packers fan, so fuck you this week, Trevor. And I will say I was inspired. I took my trip to Lambeau that I talked about quite a bit. I was inspired by that, and it's kind of reinforced my negative opinions of the Mariners ownership and front office. But the Mariners are limping into the offseason still. Somehow we're in mid-December and they're still limping into the offseason. I mean, they telegraphed pretty early that they were not going to have a lot of money to spend. I would be curious I guess I'll give my because we might have a trade that's fully imminent, and I've probably talked about it already, but my take on why you would trade Luis Castillo, there's a couple reasons. One is you have a ton of depth at starting pitching, obviously. You have the four, the Gilbert, Kirby, Wu, and I can never think of the other guy. You have those, and then you have Hancock, and they're gonna have. They're very good. They're very good at developing pitching, and why can't I think of? I can never think of the other guy. Oh, this is an annoying thing. This is why when I was growing up, I wanted to be a real life sports broadcaster, and it's no accident that it never happened, I suppose. Anyways, one, you have a lot of depth there. Two, you need money to spend money. God damn it, Miller. Okay. Jesus Christ. Hold on a second. It's nice to get. It's nice to be getting from the people watching, from the very few people watching, getting to be getting corrections. That's nice. So they have Bryce Miller, and then there's Roki Sasaki is a possible signing, which, by the way, if you're out there and you don't want the Mariners to sign Roki Sasaki, you're wrong, because he's a guy that's coming from Japan. It's international signing pool bonus money that's going to go to him. He's cheap, and he would free up the opportunity to sign or to trade away Luis Castillo with maybe no drop-off. That's incredibly valuable. The reason I'm interested in trading Luis Castillo, if he's willing to waive his no trade clause, is he's in his early 30s and it's going to be over pretty soon for him. You can't assume that this rotation is going to be a 5-man rotation going forward. And so I'm actually willing to trade him for prospects if it was the right prospects. I know that the Mariners have flirted with in this offseason already. They flirted with trading him for Tristan Cassis, the Red Sox first baseman, who, by the way, I'd be totally fine with if that was the deal, but I'm not really willing to give up more for him. And the reason is because Tristan Cassis, I think any hitter you bring to T-Mobile Park, you have to be worried about if they will continue to perform at T-Mobile Park. And I'm not sure Cassis will. I have a little more faith in Cassis than I do in a guy like Christian Walker. That's actually the guy that Peter Gammons talked about, how the Mariners are super interested in Christian Walker, and that's part of the reason they want to trade away Luis Castillo, is so they have the opportunity to sign Christian Walker. And it's like, I thought we had reached a point. I thought we had reached like a knowledge base where everyone understood that T-Mobile Park suppresses offensive numbers. And it's not just the batter's eye. It's not just the marine layer. It's a variety of things. It's not just home runs, by the way. In fact, bringing in the fences solved a lot of the home run issue. But there's a lot of elements of T-Mobile Park that suppress batters' performance, and especially right-handed batters' performance. So I am worried about taking a guy, Christian Walker, a right-handed, mid-30s first baseman, out of arguably the second-best hitter's environment in all of baseball, and putting him in T-Mobile Park and not having that dude become a massive disappointment. An analogy, if you're not a huge baseball fan, is many years ago, the Seahawks traded for Jimmy Graham. They traded Max Unger and change for Jimmy Graham. And it was pretty obvious to me that, like, even if he kept the same target share that he had in New Orleans, Jimmy Graham was going to underperform his New Orleans numbers. There was no way that he was going to match those numbers because the Seahawks did not pass the ball as much as the Saints did. It was literally like 65% of the passes. They also had more targets to pass to. And I want to say in New Orleans, Jimmy Graham had like 20 or 25% of the target share. Came here, stayed pretty close to that, but didn't catch 100 balls for 1,200 yards or whatever his peak was in New Orleans. And people view that trade as Jimmy Graham underperforming expectations. And that's because your expectations were unrealistic. So that to me is like, if you bring Christian Walker to Seattle, to me it feels like a big experiment. And I will admit, like, there's been a bunch of times where I have felt apprehensive about moves that turned out great. Trading for Nelson Cruz, or what I think they signed Nelson Cruz initially, right? But the any way they've acquired Nelson Cruz over the years, I've not been thrilled about it. I think I had a blog at the time, and I wrote a blog post about how because they traded Michael Saunders in the same offseason, and I was like, you basically traded Michael Saunders for you got rid of Michael Saunders for a more expensive, older Michael Saunders that can't play the field. And I mean, could not have been more wrong. Saunders obviously didn't go on to have like an amazing career, and Nelson Cruz did. But what I learned from that is, like, Nelson Cruz really just like had power and offensive ability that transcended ballpark. And I think that's kind of what you need. Like, Nelson Cruz was one of the best DHs in the history of baseball in his time in Seattle. And you just like, is Christian Walker that guy? A guy that in Arizona, just a tremendously hitter-friendly environment. Is he a guy that's here's his triple slash line is 251, 335, 468. So like just over 200 isolated power, like decent walk rate, decent contact rate. The strikeout rate, I'm not sure. Let's his strikeout percentage is a little bit high, 24.1% strikeout rate. I'm gonna pull up his Statcast numbers real quick. Hold on, there we go. So a guy that's like expected batting average is lower than his actual batting average. His like all these things to me are a guy that's like not absolutely mashing, and if the guy's not absolutely mashing, I worry about that translating to T-Mobile Park, because like his expected slugging of 457, which takes like batted ball quality, and you could quibble with the numbers, but like let's use it as something of a baseline. Well, you got to imagine that's going to be lower at T-Mobile Park, and is a 430 slugging first baseman in T-Mobile Park, does that get the job done? I don't care about strikeouts like the Mariners do, and I do care about walks, maybe more than the Mariners do. But I think like I'm, yeah. So I guess you look at there are certain things that you like. I think are good, like barrel rate's good, hard hit rate's good, bat speed is good. Obviously, like these are all positive things, but like, do they translate to performance on the field? And I just worry about that. And also, it's a guy who's 33. He'll play next year at 34 years old. That's going to cost probably $20-ish million a year, maybe $18 million a year. And if that guy's the final piece, fine. It seems like an overpay to me. It seems like a risk to me. If that was a guy who you're like, we're either a playoff team with a weak first baseman, or a playoff team with a strong first baseman if everything comes together or stays together for Christian Walker, this dude scares the shit out of me going from Arizona to Seattle. Another guy, actually, real quickly, let's take a look at I was trying to find like a really good free agent tracker, which is it's surprisingly hard to find, because I haven't done this podcast since Juan Soto signed his 15-year, $760 million deal, which, I mean, it's tough because it's like when you buy a home, right? It's hard to even imagine that in 10 years the value of homes might be twice as much. Some of you might not own homes. I shouldn't take that for granted. I know every time I've been seriously looking at a home, you go like, well, this has to be the peak of the market because it's so goddamn expensive. And then you look back 10 years later and you're like, holy shit, if I would have bought then, I'd be a millionaire now. Yeah, see, why does this ad keep doing this to me? It keeps fucking me on this too. Why do I not have an ad blocker? Do it, ad blocker. Do it for me. Let's see if it works. Let's see if this works, because this keeps taking this fucking contract information, and that's very annoying. I want to tell you, that's very annoying. Let's see if we can get it to reload and maybe it'll work. It'll probably complain to me so anyways, your remaining free agents that I think, I'll fix it next time. Shut the fuck up, CBS Sports. Of the remaining free agents, Alex Bregman is interesting. I don't really think that the Mariners have a real shot at Alex Bregman, frankly. I'm in on Roki Sasaki because you just have to be. There's no option. You have to be in on Roki Sasaki because he presents such surplus value. A guy that's going to sign for significantly less than market value starting pitchers. And then you start to get into these kind of like, I like Jerkson Profar. He's way down this list. Is he exciting? I don't know. He's also probably outfield only at this point. Gleyber Torres, I've talked about him a bunch. I would rather they sign nobody than sign Gleyber Torres. You have Gleyber Torres on the roster and Dylan Moore and a guy with a lot more versatility. I would rather see what the young guys have. I would rather see a low-risk option at second base than to spend anything of value, to spend any significant money on Gleyber Torres. I am not a Gleyber Torres believer. I do not think his game will translate into T-Mobile Park. One, that's point blank period, as I don't think his game is going to translate into T-Mobile Park. And two is, I just don't think he's that good. I don't think he's better than Dylan Moore. I think it's probably the Teoscar Hernandez time has passed. I think like I'm more in on I think the Mariners are planning on Victor Robles being a starter, which was my only, and I this was back even when Alex was on the podcast. My only apprehension to them signing him to a deal was that they would view that as the move. That's the move for the outfield that they needed. That's the starter that they needed. And I think like if that dude is your starter by performance, like he makes it impossible to keep playing who you planned on being your starting right fielder, then that's great. But that's not necessarily like he had a good stretch last year. But I'd be in on Anthony Santander for sure. And then yeah, you get down to this list and it's like it gets uglier and uglier the further you go down. Tyler O'Neill, by the way, signs a 3-year, $49 million deal. I was pissed at the trade at the time when the Mariners traded O'Neill away, and he's continued to be like he's been up and down, but he's had a career for himself. A guy that I think probably could have found his spot on this roster if the Mariners weren't like I can't imagine them bringing him back and admitting defeat like that. That just doesn't seem like a Mariners thing to do. And you get down this list, I mean Justin Turner, Carlos Santana, Paul Goldschmidt, JD Martinez, these are like kind of all the same guys that are like these aging can you crank it up for one more year? I think obviously Jesse Winker's not coming back. I actually like Frankie Montes a lot, by the way. The Mets are having a if not a, I mean, I think they're having a good offseason. I think they are making themselves probably like a World Series favorite. But yeah, and then so it's the pickings are getting slim. They were slim to begin with. I don't think that anyone has signed really that the Mariners had like a legitimate shot at. But I do think that the market is higher than you would have expected, right? Like Blake Snell, that's who I would like to see the Mariners go after Blake Snell because he's one of few free agents that's shown any interest in coming to Seattle. And Blake Snell signs with the Dodgers for $182 million. I don't know if I would have wanted him for $182 million. We're approaching a point in this offseason. And I want to look at one last thing, which is I want to look at Pete Alonso, because I bet you people are divided on if you have Pete Alonso or Christian Walker higher. And just to go back and forth on these StatCast numbers, you're starting to get to a guy who's like, to me, maybe a guy who has a little more like undeniable power, had a little bit of a down year, 34 home runs in 2024, but 46 and 40 home runs the year before that. Strikeout rate's still up there. Walk rate is fine. The bat speed is still strong. Is it as strong as it was in previous years? I'm not sure. Let's see. We can probably get to this pretty quickly, right? No, that's not what I want. That's not really what I want. Come on. What I would really like, let's get back to 2024 on this. But I guess we could see bat speed here when they start measuring bat speed. Alonso's scary. Listen, signing any big money free agent is scary. And while it's not your money and it's not my money, I guess they didn't have bat speed prior to this. It's not your money and it's not my money. We can walk into this offseason as Mariners fans and go, yeah, it's scary for them to devote money to someone because that might be the last time they devote some money to someone for a decade. They're still reeling from Robinson Cano. It seems like there's still trauma in the organization from the Robinson Cano signing. So yeah, I don't know who the guy that could trade for is necessarily. I'd be interested in actually if you have any thoughts on that. I'd be happy to talk about it. I know there was some talk about Nico Horner. I'm like interested in Nico Horner, but Kyle Tucker just got traded to the Cubs, by the way, for Isaac Paredes went with him. So though I think it's possible Paredes is on his way, may move again in the offseason. I don't think that's like he's stuck in Houston. I don't think the Astros are going to trade with the Mariners. So I think Paredes is probably off the table. And then you start to get into like Yandy Diaz. Do you want Yandy Diaz? What are you willing to give up for Yandy Diaz? Pretty obviously the Rays like Yandy Diaz more than I think at least the public, at least fans like Yandy Diaz. Maybe not Tampa Bay fans, but like they're going to want more for him than I think you're going to be happy to pay for him. And the options feel like they're drying up. The trade options feel like they're drying up. I don't want to try to force Cassis, who's like, I think is like, I actually think Tristan Cassis might end up being a very good hitter in Major League Baseball. But you get into these numbers, like, so he's only 212 plate appearances in 2024. He had 212 at bats, 243 plate appearances, 502 plate appearances in 2025. Good walk rate, bad strikeout rate. You're like, start to get back into this kind of realm of bat speed is fine. Is it great? No. Is this guy, like, does he have the kind of like light tower power that you, I think, need to have to succeed in T-Mobile Park? I don't know. I don't know if that guy's available for, so I'm at a point where I don't know if I think the Mariners are going to make, like, I don't think they're going to sign Alex Bregman. Alex Bregman feels like a big win to me. I'm worried about Christian Walker on a multi-year deal. I'm worried about Pete Alonso on a multi-year deal with any meaningful salary. And then everything else that's out there, I think, like, Gleyber Torres feels like a guy who you'd be going out to spend money just for PR's sake because he doesn't improve your team. Jurickson Profar is a guy I like. I would love to see him end up playing for the Mariners in some way, but is he a guy that's like actually good? Is he a marquee signing of the offseason? Absolutely not. He's an upside guy. And people are tired of that. And I understand why. So anyway, if they trade, I'd be fine with them trading Luis Castillo no matter what. I'd be fine with them. I don't care if they make an addition at second base. I'd love to see a third baseman acquired, but the options are dwindling, right? And I imagine somewhat soon we will see an Alex Bregman signing. Isaac Paredes is off the table now, at least for the Mariners. And yeah, it's thinning out. And the Mariners have done nothing. And it seems like they're waiting. They're in this holding period, this waiting period to trade Luis Castillo before they'll make any moves, which to me means like they have to be in a bad situation because even I could like borrow against, I could take on debt. You know what I mean? Like the they can't take on some short-term debt they can't, have a little bit of liability on their payroll because they're that strapped. That's worrisome. There's just, I do feel like there's some people who are just never going to be happy until this team is sold. And I kind of am starting to agree with them. I don't want to see Luis Castillo go because I don't think he's a good pitcher, by the way. I think he's a very good pitcher. But anyway, the Seahawks are playing the Packers this weekend. It's a big game. We can look at real quick. It's kind of cool. Let's pull this bad boy up. We'll get back to our ways. So present chance with the I believe it is with the Rams. Is that right? Is it with the Rams factored in? Maybe it's not with the Rams factored in. I thought their chances were higher. So no, we don't know. We don't need to deal with this. I think it's with the Rams factored in, but basically if the Seahawks win against the Packers with the present scenario where the Rams have beaten the 49ers, they would go up to a 75% chance of making the playoffs. And I don't know. I've seen a lot of criticism of playoff odds recently, and I find it a little bit embarrassing. I just it's similar to how I thought we had gotten past where we didn't understand park factors for baseball. Like, do we not understand that it's not a binary of like your chances of making the playoffs are 1 and 2 because the options are either do or don't make the playoffs? Like, making the playoffs, it's just compound probability of the remainder of the schedule. You can see here, like, this is 131,000 simulations that include all possible outcomes and at their rate of probability. And yeah, so it's a big game for the Seahawks, but ultimately the biggest game for the Seahawks remaining is very likely to be the the Week 18 game against the Rams. And how much more could you have asked for? Is this like if the Seahawks win 11 games? Mike Hansen, if you're out there watching, you probably aren't. Mike Hansen commented, "Did you pick 12 games? Did you pick 12 games as your win total for the Seahawks, or was it or was it 11? I think I picked 12 and you picked 11. That would be like right on track with pretty optimistic outlooks. By the way, I also have the Seahawks at like, I want to say it's like 38-1 to appear in the Super Bowl and like 78-1 to win the Super Bowl. Let's see what those odds are now. Super Bowl futures. Got to be better than that. I mean, you can't imagine them being worse than that. What's a good reputable, not gonna bury me in fucking pop-ups? We're gonna go to oddshark.com and find out what the futures odds are, because I think they're doing pretty well. At this point, though, what's your stance on Geno? And I know where there's like constant consternation about it's like a Dr. Seuss. Speaking like Dr. Seuss all of a sudden. There's a lot of consternation about Geno Smith and his future in Seattle. If he's the guy, the quote-unquote guy. Man, the Seahawks are still, it's like 50-1 odds. I almost want to go put more money on them with that in mind. Is that right? Are they really? No, this has got to be like preseason or something. What would be like an acceptable, and I'm going to say a 2-year extension. And I guess I would say like in the parameters being he's not going to make less annually than he makes right now. That's not how extensions work in the NFL. If you're going to extend a guy, it is a raise. So let's set his salary right now. Minimum salary is like $25 million with no escalators. What is an acceptable? I would say if they signed him to a 2-year, $80 million extension, like I think that's in the range of what I would be somewhat comfortable with, especially if there was an option to get out of it after that first year of the extension. So they could have the flexibility to go acquire a young quarterback, be that a mid-round pick. I doubt there's going to be a guy that they draft in the first round this year. I just don't think there's – I'm a big draft guy, folks. And I actually think Shedeur Sanders' game translates pretty well to the NFL. I'm terrified of what that guy brings as far as like – I mean, I think the Giants got incredibly lucky with Eli Manning. The way that he handled his being drafted by San Diego and refusing to play in San Diego, like that is a guy that I am worried about. And I have a feeling that Shedeur is gonna have some stuff like that. I also kind of wonder if there's a kind of a handshake agreement with Tom Brady and Shedeur, and I'm sure it's not quite that formal, but like it seems like the Raiders are going to value Shedeur higher than everybody else. And quarterbacks get pushed up. You know, a couple of years ago we saw there was one quarterback in the first round. It was Kenny Pickett, and then there was no quarterbacks till the third round, and everyone wanted the Seahawks to draft Malik Willis. And that has turned out to be like a pretty good decision to not draft Malik Willis, by the way, throughout those first 2 rounds. I think he ended up being a third rounder in Tennessee and got waived by them in the offseason. So is that guy like, I think there's options. If Quinn Ewers is in this draft, which he probably will be, I like Quinn Ewers, the kid out of Penn State. I like, there's a bunch of guys, do you give yourself an opportunity to draft a guy and sit him behind Geno, make a minimal investment in a quarterback and sit him behind Geno for a couple of years, and then move on from Geno when that quarterback's ready? I think like I'm fine with that. I'd be fine with an extension like that, and I think that if they do that at man, I'm like just blown away that the Seahawks are still 50-1 to win the Super Bowl. It's blowing my mind that a team that is like high probability to make the play. I guess that's the deal, is they're like not really that high of a probability to make the playoffs. But I think it's a team that's like, so they're 25-1 to win the conference. It's blowing my mind, folks. Detroit is almost even money. And the Seahawks took Detroit down to the wire. I mean, I don't want to be, I'm not trying to give you gambling advice, but like this feels to me like the Seahawks are still undervalued. I was bragging, assuming they had, and by the way, they have obviously increased their value since then, but I'm blown away. There, I'll show you what I'm seeing. This is the ESPN bet NFL futures odds for the Seahawks to win the conference, to win the NFC, 20 plus 2,500. So implied odds are 25-1, and then to win the Super Bowl, plus 5,000 implied odds, 50-1. I mean, I hate to be the asshole that's just like a homer betting on his. I mean, look at this. Outside of like the Commander, I mean, the Seahawks are like in a very clear at the bottom tier of prospective playoff teams. This is crazy. This is crazy to me that they're. I mean, that is so wild, man. Also, like, is Atlanta? Atlanta's, I think, in second place, like a game out of the. I'm gonna put some fucking money on the Falcons. Anyway, so it's a big game for the Seahawks. Obviously, they have LA has the tiebreaker as of now. Presumably, I think that I wonder what the Seahawks conference record is compared to them. If they could make up the tiebreaker, like if they won the Week 18 matchup, if the Seahawks won the Week 18 matchup, would LA still have the tiebreaker? I'm not sure. I could figure this out. I'm not going to in the moment. But what I really want to talk about is the 49ers-Rams game yesterday, because I think it really exposed the 49ers. And the 49ers were like pretty obviously at the end of their window. And I mean, as a Seahawks fan, you got to be thrilled about that, right? Like, I'm scared of Kyle Shanahan continuing. I think there's a chance that you see the 49ers move on from Kyle Shanahan. They were impatient with Jim Harbaugh when he didn't bring a championship. I think Kyle Shanahan's a great coach. I think Jim Harbaugh's a great coach. And I think that the patience in San Francisco is too short. But I think like you're at the end of this, like Deebo Samuel is showing signs of decline. The team is going to have to choose to either commit to Brock Purdy or move on, start over at quarterback. And I don't know if I'd be comfortable with the Seahawks making Brock Purdy the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, for example. I understand why maybe there's apprehension to extend Brock Purdy on a massive deal. And then you're like, I don't really buy into Christian McCaffrey being the reason the running game is great, but he's at the end of his career, probably pretty close to it. Trent Williams is pretty close to the end of his career. The defense is getting very expensive. The cap situation is getting progressively worse. And I think like the window is about to close. It might be closed on the 49ers. A lot of people thought it was closed in this offseason, and they managed to throw together a team for one more run at it. And then obviously Christian McCaffrey has been hurt for a lot of the year, and Brandon Ayuk, who they signed to a big deal, he this is funny. Mike Hansen says, I think you're shadow banned for Too Much Mariners. First time I've seen a notice of your podcast in weeks. I got news for you, Mike Hansen. It's I've been sick and traveling a lot. I have not been recording podcasts. I got to be better about it. We're going to get better, or we're going to quit. One of the two. It's in debate on both sides in 2025. If you like it, share it, please, because fucking A. So it's an embarrassingly small amount of people that listen to this podcast. What was I talking about? So the 49ers played like a pretty anemic game against the Rams. Final score ends up being, 12-6? I will say the Rams, to a degree, the weather to a degree, like Brock Purdy has never possessed like jump off the page or jump off the screen physical traits. That's why he was the last pick in the draft. It's why the 49ers probably have not extended him yet. It's why people doubt him. It's why I doubt him. And you see the I mean, I think like the natural comparison is Drew Brees, because people talk about Brock Purdy being like he's an elite processor, which is like such an annoying esoteric thing that you can't ever measure, and so it's super annoying to talk about. But that's like supposedly what Sean Payton values in a quarterback, which would make sense why having a guy, Bo Nix, who's played 7,000 college games, makes sense. A guy that's like, playing in a semi-complex but very college offense at Oregon, and that's played at Auburn also. Like it makes sense. He's also there already, so like, it's a little bit like the Geno Smith situation where it's like, is Brock Purdy worth this much? Would you pay him this much? And also, would the rest of the league pay him this much? Do you start to negotiate against yourself? We've already seen what the market's like for Geno Smith. The league isn't interested, at least not at the rate that he wanted to be paid last time. Are they interested this time? Is the league going to pay Brock Purdy $60 million a year? Is somebody going to do it? I don't know. Like, I don't know that we're in a era of football where there's like some jackass owner that doesn't, like an Al Davis or I mean, Jerry Jones is still alive, but a guy that just goes out and goes, this guy has been, I don't think Jerry Jones is going to go sign Brock Purdy. But my point is, like, I don't think there's somebody out there that's just like blindly picking a guy who's performed well at points in his career. Like, I think that these traits matter to these teams. I don't think there's anybody that's going to go out and mistakenly spend $60 million on Brock Purdy. But I don't know if they're going to do it on purpose either. I don't know if they're going to do it in an educated way either. And also the dude, what was the guy that wouldn't go back in the game? I know it's fun to watch me type. Devondre Campbell, linebacker, wouldn't go into the game. By the way, I mean, I don't think he's officially released. It seems like Devondre Campbell is probably going to face a release. What is Devondre Campbell's contract situation? Not because I care if I don't think he's coming to Seattle or anything like that. But oh shit, this is like another. So Spot Track has, these guys, these 49ers. Oh, okay, these are all void years at the end, so it looks like he's a free agent after this year. Man, that's lucky. I thought he was signed to like I saw the deal that I saw was like a $39 million deal, but that must have been a previous contract. So Devondre Campbell refused to go into the game. It's become a source of controversy. His teammates are calling him out. His coach is calling him out. This kind of thing will precede a player being released. I can't imagine him. The 49ers would have a bunch of dead cap. Maybe they'll put him on IR, whatever it is. But he's got 1 year remaining. I think it's the end of his time in San Francisco and maybe the end of his career. That being said, fucking A, can I relate to Devondre Campbell? I was thinking about this right before the pandemic. I had a 6-month-old. Well, let's look at what Mike Hansen said real quick. I do not like the 49ers, but their injuries have been a lot this year. Looks like their coach might be losing the locker room. They played well the last week against the Bears. Purdy is not horrible. 65% completion percentage. 3,000 yards, presumably 15 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 94 quarterback rating. Yeah, these are all like I said, like I think Brock Purdy's a starter in the NFL. I'm not trying to take away from that. I think he's just like, would you want to give that dude $60 million? Because that's the reality. Is like the next big signing is just going to be a little bit bigger than the last signing. The only reason Juan Soto got $765 million is because Shohei Ohtani got $700 million. It's all deferred, whatever, like all that stuff. But it's and by the way, I don't think any of Yeah, that's what Mike Hansen said. Nope. Mike, what would you give? What would you give Geno Smith on a 2-year extension? What's the max you'd be willing to be happy about as a fan? 2 years, so after 2025, because that's when the extension kicks in. I said 2 years, $80 million. Brock Purdy, yeah, I don't want to give him $60 million a year, and I don't know if the 49ers can realistically do that and keep. I mean, signing Brandon Ayuk seems Mike says 40 each. That's the 2 years, $80 million. Yeah, I agree. I'd be fine with that. I think it's like a good hedge. Signing Brandon Ayuk, I can't believe the 49ers did it, and then it's like that's like going for it. You didn't hear me say that. Two mediocre minds think alike on this one. I got a knot on my phone by me while I'm recording. Anyway, it feels to me like it's the end for the 49ers. And I hope as a Seahawks fan, I hope that Kyle Shanahan gets fired and doesn't get a chance to rebuild this program, because I do think he's a very good coach. He's a coach that I think will be in high demand. I don't think he would be unemployed for long. Speaking of unemployed coaches, and maybe soon to be unemployed coaches, we'll move on from that briefly because, so first off, the former Washington Huskies head coach, Kalen DeBoer, we know in the offseason, moved on, became the head coach of Alabama. And then Alabama missed the playoff, which was a surprise to me. I got to be honest with you. I thought they were gonna do whatever gymnastics they had to do to bring in to get Alabama into the playoff that they did last year. Which, by the way, like I do think last year and the subsequent games and this year they've really made a case that the committee got it right last year. That Florida State should not have been in the playoff. I think they earned it. I think they deserved it. But, like, they weren't as good as Alabama. It's hard to argue that they were as good as Alabama. Kalen DeBoer goes there, like, famously loses to Vanderbilt. The fan base absolutely implodes. Loses to Tennessee, loses to Oklahoma, a 3-loss team. And I thought they were going to make it into the playoff as a 3-loss team. And I will tell you, like, whatever you feel about the college football playoff, like, I am excited to experience it. I think it's going to be a really fun couple weeks of games. You got to imagine, like, unless Kalen DeBoer comes out, he almost has to go and, like, win a national championship next year. And do it in convincing fashion, by the way, to not get let go midseason. It seems like Kalen DeBoer's seat is the hottest it could possibly be. And I've asked this question to family of mine, to friends of mine. I'll ask it here probably for not the first time. If Kalen DeBoer leaves Alabama in some form after next year, and I think there's like a ton of speculation. It's probably right that Jedd Fisch is short for Washington. And by the way, who's speculating on it? Me. I think he's short. I think he's a short-term option for Washington. I think if the Florida job opened up and they offered it to him, he would take it, no doubt. His buyout drops a ton after next year. Like it's to me, it seems pretty obvious that Jedd Fisch could be gone after next year. And if he goes to the NFL, I think that the Huskies roster maybe remains. And if he leaves, you go back. If he leaves for a college program, especially Florida, you're probably going through some of the same machinations that we've been through this offseason of just like this portal churn and the roster being just completely uprooted and losing all these valuable players. Although I saw that the Hatchet kid that went to Oklahoma came back. He's coming back to Washington, but oh man, it'll be a stressful thing. I think it'll be in a similar way. It'll be like kind of an exciting thing to figure out who the next new guy is going to be. But my question is, as a Washington fan, if you're a Washington fan, if Kalen DeBoer becomes available in the offseason, in the next offseason, not this offseason, and let's say it happens, let's say he's available and Jedd Fisch has departed. Would you bring him back? Would you want him back at Washington? Are your feelings too hurt? I guess that's the thing. Two things. Could your ego allow it, and do you think it would be a smart move? Because if this time in Alabama has made you think he's not actually that great of a coach, and especially he's now separated from his longtime offensive coordinator, Ryan Grubb, who's coaching the Seahawks, who I'm a huge fan of, and offensive line coach Scott Huff. If those guys were the secret sauce, if that's what you believe, then you probably don't want him back with Washington. Also, if your feelings are hurt, if you think like he abandoned my favorite team, he abandoned after reaching nearly the highest heights, a team that did not perform as well, he left to, and then also kind of underperformed there. Like, dude, are your feelings hurt? Is there too much of like taking your ex back after she fucked someone else for 2 years? Like, I don't know. For me, bring him back. Bring him back on, and I'm not even kidding, whatever the contract that was sitting on the table that he refused to sign, bring him back on that contract. I think he's a tremendous coach. Let's see. Okay, this is Mike Hansen says, no, let's get someone who wants to stay, not leave when the first prettier woman walks by. Well, I think there's a reality that, like, I don't know that there's going to be a Don James type, a Jim Lambright type. I don't know that there's going to be someone who doesn't want to leave when the prettier, especially because, like, the college game and the pro game, and we'll talk about this in a moment, but they're becoming like the difference between them is narrowing by quite a bit. It seems like with the NIL and the way that players are being paid, the way that they're able to move around. I mean, they're able to move around even more in college, and I think that it's like I do think that, especially at a program like Washington, I think that it's going to be really hard to find someone who just wants to stick at Washington. Now, if that guy, I mean, and the way that I think you would expect to find that guy is someone who has ties to the program and who is even out, like Marcus Tuiasosopo is out there coaching. Is he the guy? But then the problem with bringing in a guy like that is the same thing I'm scared about with the Mariners having Edgar Martinez involved in their hitting coaching is at some point you might have to fire that guy. And now Marcus Tuiasosopo hates the Washington football program. I don't like that. So yeah, I mean, I think you could bring, to me, you could bring DeBoer back on a contract that was like made it harder for him to leave for sure. Yeah, this says maybe Bill or Pete's kid would want to work their way up, but we can talk about that in a moment because I don't think Steve Belichick's going to be around in Washington much longer. Yeah, I also think my personal opinion on DeBoer is that I don't think he's an incredible recruiter. I think he's an incredible X's and O's coach. I think he's bound for the NFL. I think he's going to be a great NFL head coach, at least from a scheming standpoint. And I mean, like, in the mold of a Kyle Shanahan or a Mike McDonald or somebody like that. And I don't think he's going to go there for a coordinator job, although I will say it would be pretty poetic if Ryan Grubb ended up with a head coaching job and Kalen DeBoer for a year took a coordinator job in the NFL in Seattle. That would be pretty fucking poetic. But yeah, I don't know if that's even like on the table. I've also seen his name floated. I heard it on, and this is not speculation with like any backing, but just speculation, period, on the, oh my God, Say Pod, which is a Washington Huskies podcast with Christian Capel and Danny O'Neill. They were talking about him being a fit at USC. I don't know that DeBoer is going to want to come back here. I don't know that the program would want him back. I would welcome him with open arms, is what I'm saying. The last thing to talk about and why Steve Belichick is probably not going to be the defensive coordinator for the Huskies anymore is because Bill Belichick has accepted a head coaching job at the University of North Carolina. And it's curious. I mean, it's a guy, Belichick's obviously like decades removed, absolutely decades removed from coaching in college. I'm trying to see when did Bill Belichick, when was the last time he coached in college, if ever? Because one thing you don't realize is, I mean, I don't want to put this on you. You may realize this, but one thing I don't realize until I'm reminded by it is that he was like a great coordinator, like a top level coordinator for a long time. Yes, so never coached in college. His dad coached at North Carolina, apparently. I would not be surprised if. So Bill Belichick has the buyout in his contract is crazy. Yeah, so Mike says, I knew you were going to say that. I wanted him to go to the Bears. If Pete is not done, he might end up in Chicago next year. I think that's interesting. I think I'll be interested. My secret guess is that Cliff Kingsbury ends up coaching in Chicago next year because he coached Caleb Williams at USC, and somebody's going to keep giving Cliff Kingsbury head coaching opportunities. What was the dude? Because he coached Kyler Murray in Arizona, and he coached him. There was another guy though that he was connected to. Anyways, I think my secret guess is that Cliff Kingsbury ends in. It's not secret. My guess is that Cliff Kingsbury ends up there. I haven't heard anyone else say that, by the way, but I could be wrong. I've seen Pete Carroll's name floated out there. That would make sense to me. So Bill Belichick, it's 5 years, $50 million contract. First 3 years guaranteed. The buyout, if it's before June 1st, 2025. So that is, by the way, the deadline for that is before the beginning of the college football season. First college football games are usually played in late August. If it's before June 21st or June 1st, 2025, it's a $10 million buyout, meaning whoever the University of North Carolina recoups $10 million if he takes a job elsewhere. After June 1st, 2025, it's $1 million. So what is the point of that? First off, I mean, the very obvious thing is that Bill Belichick has an opportunity to return to the NFL, has an opportunity to get out of North Carolina if he wants to. But the other obvious thing to me is Bill Belichick spent the last offseason interviewing for jobs and did not land one of those jobs. And maybe there were jobs that he turned down that he would not have turned down if he were able to write into the contract something like this that allowed him to leave if something better came along. And of course, most teams have their coach hired by June 1st. But let's say you were a team like the Cowboys, who is a team that I think would be interesting. And you have an overbearing owner, Jerry Jones, who has his hand in all the personnel decisions anyway. And Belichick has been rumored to the Cowboys for 3 or 4 years now, and Mike McCarthy has somehow just clung to that job. Could the Cowboys go through the entire offseason and draft process and with no coach, and then June 1st offer that job to Bill Belichick? Is that even an appealing job for Belichick at this point? Like, the Cowboys look like their window's closing as fast as the 49ers, the way they're going to be paying Dak Prescott. It's a super interesting thing. I think culturally it's going to be crazy to watch Belichick switch from the NFL to college. But I think that now with NIL, what we are actually seeing, and I'm a little surprised by this, because this is not what I would have projected. Like, I think if you would have worked out the game theory projections of what effect NIL would have, it would have made the haves have more and the have-nots have less. And I think what it has done is democratized like the top 60 college football teams. It hasn't democratized college football. It hasn't made it so that Washington State has an equal shot to Washington to win a national championship. It hasn't done it all the way down, but I do think in that top 60, I remember seeing a stat that like 2/3 or 3/4 of starting quarterbacks in Power 5 conferences or Power 4 conferences, I suppose, were transfers. Mike Hansen, I'm looking at a photo that you sent me. Oh, he's just sending me a joke. He's sending me a screenshot of a joke. What are we gonna do? Put it on the fucking screen, Mike Hansen? Um, the I just think like it almost pays to be a tactician as opposed to an incredible recruiter now because that talent's just gonna kind of like find its level. Do you know what I mean? Like a guy that's it blows my mind that Arch Manning stayed at Texas. It's got to be with the assurance that like he's getting the job next year. Either Quinn Ewers is gone, but via the draft, gone via the transfer portal, or he's benched behind Arch Manning. There's probably nobody in Division I college football that has more pressure on them than Quinn Ewers because he is running from Arch Manning at this point. And that's like an anomaly today for a guy to sit for a couple of years when he could go start at another major program and then just transfer to a better program after that year. So yeah, I think Belichick's an interesting fit because I think he might be able to just go in and, build a great college defense, go, create a team that's tactically very sound, probably can figure out how to make like an 8-win team out of North Carolina, 9-win team out of North Carolina, and then move on to the NFL. If not the next year, possibly during the season, which is going to be absolutely bizarre. And the one thing I will say about that is that if Bill Belichick leaves North Carolina before he coaches a game or mid-season for an NFL job, I actually think that is a thing he could do to hurt his legacy. To be the kind of guy that walks into North Carolina and leaves them in the lurch with no head coach. All right, I got to go. Sorry, there hasn't been a lot of podcasts. They're coming or they're not coming. I don't know. I'm busy. I'm tired. This podcast has not grown. It stopped growing at some point, which is not necessarily your fault. It's my fault, but it's the reality. So, but please come see me before I stop recording today. Please come see me at Northwest Brewing I want to say it's in Redmond, Washington this Saturday. I'm headlining with Ryan Danley and Dan Hurwitz. I don't know Ryan, but Dan Hurwitz is fucking hilarious. Come out to that, 8 p.m., Northwest Brewing, Saturday, December 14th. $18 tickets still available. It looks like there's a 10% coupon on these tickets. I don't know anything about any of this. In fact, I had to look up the venue. I love these guys, Cozy Comedy. Go check out more of their shows. I'm at a point with comedy and 2 kids where I just have to someone was telling me, they're like, actually, by the way, I'm at Mike Hansen's show at Top Gun in Puyallup. And I was reminded of that because one of the guys that's opening for me there was like, hey, I'm opening for you at Top Gun, or I'm opening for you on whatever day, December 18th, I believe. And I was like, where is that? And he's like, what do you mean? You don't know? And I was like, oh, dude, by the way, Mike Hansen, is it December 18th? I think it's December 18th. I'm excited for it. Don't fucking take this. Don't you take this as me not being excited for it, Mike. Anyways, Casey McLean Comedy everywhere. My special's almost at 50,000 views. If you could go watch that and share it with your friends, I would love that. Thank you for listening to this. I'm sure it wasn't easy. It might not have even been fun, but I do appreciate you. Bye. Yes, Wednesday, December 18th, Top Gun Bar and Grill right next to there's a little airport in Puyallup. It's actually a really crazy, cool bar. You could sit and watch planes land and watch me crash and burn. Maybe I'll have a bunch of new material that I'm sure you haven't seen. So come on, check that out. Also, Northwest Brewing in Redmond, Washington. Come to that. Have a good weekend. I love you. I will talk to you later. Bye. Oh, wait, I got to set a fucking video to leave on. Here we go. All right.